Good morning. It's a great pleasure to be here in Astana, a beautiful, majestic city. It's my first time here. I hope not the last. I was very privileged a few years ago, 2 years ago in fact, to welcome Kulyash and Makpal and her colleagues to Toronto. And that was my first encounter with Kazakhs and Kazakhstan, except for television. And I know that, hummus was a very big thing, mare's milk, so that's about all I knew about Kazakhstan. And since that time, I have discovered that the Kazakhs likely are maybe the hardest working people I have met yet. I've never met people who work harder than those at the NIS. I don't think they sleep. I'm positive they don't sleep. I know that Kulyash doesn't sleep, and if she doesn't sleep, nobody sleeps. Now, the title of my little speech here is Immersion in Canada, What 50 Years Have Taught Us. I have to warn you that when I come to conferences like this, and I speak at a lot of conferences, I'm always amazed at the beautiful slides, at the PowerPoint presentations that people have. Those are people likely who have secretarial staff, and graphic staff. But, Canada is a petro-state, much like Kazakhstan. About 20-25% of our gross national product depends on oil. And since oil has gone from about $120 a barrel to $40 a barrel, it has affected our economy very much. Our dollar has dropped by 25%. So I don't have all those wonderful slides for you. You're going to see only about 7 of them to keep me on track. So I am reduced now to being my own audiovisual aid. So I hope you will not mind that I don't have all the beautiful colors and moving pictures because you're not going to see them here. I'm also a little embarrassed. I was in the same room yesterday when Kathleen Hughes talked about the research done in Africa. I was pretty proud of the title of my speech today. 50 years of immersion. And Kathleen Hughes talked about 120 years of bilingual research in Africa. Well, she knows how to make a man feel inadequate. I only have 50 years. In fact, it's 50 years to this year when we started immersion in Canada. So we've been at it a long time. I was about 3 at the time. I'm going to give you 3 names. Olga Melikov, sounds Bulgarian to me, Muriel Parks, and Valerie Neal. I'll repeat those names, they're important. Olga Melikov, Muriel Parks, and Valerie Neal. So I'm sure those names mean nothing to anybody here. But I venture to say that these women have had a profound impact on the lives and careers of many of you. And they've influenced and continue to influence the lives of millions of students across the world. So who are Olga Melikov, Muriel Parks, and Valerie Neal? They were 3 mothers 50 years ago, living in Saint-Lambert, Quebec, just south of Montreal. It's a suburb of Montreal on the south shore of the St. Lawrence River. Now, these women at the time, 50 years ago, 1965, were determined that their Anglophone children, who only spoke English at home, would learn to be bilingual, because at that time, Quebec was changing dramatically from a Catholic Church-dominated society, an agricultural society, to a very modern society. Smart young students, the type that are here at NIS, the brilliant students, used to in Quebec, the French-speaking ones, become priests or notary publics, like a poor lawyer. The church liked that. Then the church lost control of the education system. The education system used to be Catholic schools, Protestant schools. That changed with a new government. The government said, no, we will have schools divided linguistically, English schools and French schools. So the church lost its influence. What did that mean? That meant that young French Canadians, boys and girls, stopped going into the seminary to be priests and nuns. Instead, these people went to business school, engineering school. So things changed dramatically. The English used to be in control. English was the power, prestige language. And I'm sure in Kazakhstan, being next door to the giant of Russia, you can appreciate that, what that does to a society. Now French became just about equally important. A lot of the new bosses were French. Smart parents, English-speaking parents could see, I just took your name in vain, Kathleen, by the way. 120 years of research to make a man feel inadequate. But, so what happened here was these smart Quebec Anglophone parents said, in order to survive in the future Quebec, our children must learn French. But 40 minutes a day in the school system doesn't work. It's not enough time to develop the optimisms that we heard about this morning here. Nothing became automatic. If you only have 40 minutes a day, that's not enough to really learn a language and respond automatically to it. The parents said, we need more time. Because what is important in learning a language, like playing the piano, besides talent, is time on task. How much time are you spending on the subject? So these women were determined that their children would grow up to learn to read, write, and speak French, to take part in the future Quebec society. These were pioneering women, and against all odds, and in spite of the pedagogical disaster which was predicted by some people said you can't teach subjects in another language. That's pedagogical disaster. The children will be confused, they won't know what to do, they'll be upset, it'll be a terrible thing. They persisted. And they forced the school board in Saint-Lambert to offer French immersion. No one knew what it was. But what happened was, in 1965 in September, in a school called St. Margaret Pendlebury, we had 23 children, along with the 3 of these women, came and enrolled in kindergarten, but there was a big difference. Where in all the other schools, the children came into kindergarten, and they heard English from their teacher, naturally. Not this time. Their teacher was a unilingual French speaker. She only spoke French. So these little 5-year-olds came in, and they didn't hear, good morning, children. They heard, bonjour les enfants, comment ça va? What? I've never heard this before. A great shock. But they were children, so they were not shocked. They took it naturally. And I love to tell the story about, parents are so concerned when they put their child into an immersion program. They think, what's going to happen to my child? He's speaking at home English, or it could be Greek, or Italian, or Spanish. He's going to school, and now they're going to speak French. He'll be confused, he'll be shocked. So one parent said to me, she sent her little boy off to school, September, and a French immersion, and I said to the parents, don't pretend it's a big deal. It's nothing special. Pretend it's just normal. So this parent didn't say a thing. Child came home, she said, how was school today? He said, oh, it was good, it was fun. What did you do? We played, we had fun. She said, oh, that's good. Finally, after about 3 months, she couldn't take it anymore. She said, but Johnny, your teacher, when your teacher speaks, aren't you confused? And the child said, yeah, at the beginning, we had some trouble. The teacher did, but she's really improved. So for the child, this was just natural. They were playing around. Let's say they wanted to paint something. And they would say to the teacher, I want to paint. Teacher said, tu veux peinturer? Tu veux peinturer? Kid said, paint, I want to paint. Peinturer, okay, peinturer. So that's how children work. It's a natural thing for them. The only anxieties are the part of the parents. So these people, these 3 women, Olga and her pals, I really think they invented immersion. And now we see immersion as becoming in Canada a very popular program. There are 300,000 students across the entire country taking it. And we see the model being replicated across the world. I was in charge of a program for 5 years helping the Estonians establish Estonian immersion for Russian-speaking students. And our Kazakh colleagues went to Estonia, and as my colleague will tell you later, they more or less modeled their language programs in the primary on the Estonian model. Finland did the same. So it started with these three very brave, pioneering women. So this is where we came from. And this proves one thing in education. The greatest and most powerful force that will demand change in education, it doesn't come from senior officials in education. It comes from educated, articulate, insistent parents. Parents are the ones that create change. They're the ones who see the need. In the Canadian context, that's exactly what it was like. Parents had said, I have had enough. We are tired of sending our children to school, taking a few words of French, and by the time they have 8 years of French, they can't even ask, où sont les toilettes? Où sont-elles? They can't even ask for the toilets. So they said, this is enough. We want our children to learn to speak the language fluently. So school board officials and politicians, they listen when taxpayers speak with one voice. Politicians always listen to the people who pay the bills. And these parents usually, and this was brought up yesterday by Kathleen, these French immersion parents are usually the most educated parents in our society. They are usually well-traveled. They see the purpose and the reason behind language. They know that, as King George V of England said, give me a man who speaks 5 languages, you've given me 5 men. Language is empowering. I watched yesterday, as I was watching this brilliant woman here do her little neuron speech, begin to start in Russian. That's very powerful for people. So Helen had a very powerful beginning. And we know that that's a powerful thing. At the conference so far here, what impressed me the most so far? Good question. We heard some tremendous speakers. It was the students on the stage yesterday morning. That was a powerful statement. That really showed what language is and what language can do. To see these young people speaking very articulate English was so impressive. And that's what language can do. So these parents realized that. So parents realized the power of language and wanted their kids to have that. But ranged against these parents are some darker forces, some negative forces. Nobody said when immersion started, immersion, what a wonderful idea. Let's spend some money on something we know nothing about. It's great. No. Darker forces. And what do? Sometimes these forces are overt, you can see them. Sometimes they're covert. They could be people who feel threatened by the other, something that's different. Okay, they feel threatened by that. They could be unilingual teachers in a school who see their jobs being threatened. If we're going to start French immersion here, or any kind of immersion, English immersion, Estonian immersion, what about my job? As the children start in grade 1 or kindergarten, grade 2, grade 3, and more bilingual teachers come into the system, into the school, what about my job? And you're changing everything. I liked it the way it was. Change is tough. I liked it the way it was. So these are people, maybe they smile at you, but they really want you to fail. Okay? It's sort of like hidden racism. You know? Some of my best friends are black. Oh yeah, sure. How often do they come to dinner? You know? So there's hidden racism, there's hidden sort of dark forces against change. So there could be principals of the school, directors. They don't want change either. They say things are just great the way they are. They say we have no time for another language. It's amazing that in Europe, some students might have take 3 languages. In Canada, most of our principals in the elementary schools up to grade 8 said, we don't have any time to teach French in school. We're so busy teaching English, math, and science. There's no time. They do it in Europe. We heard they do it in Finland, you know, where I haven't met, I mean, they're all bilingual, at least 2 languages. If they can do it, if they can do 2 languages and 3 languages and be the best in the world, why can't we? And we proved that you can, which is what Peter Mislo said here yesterday at the same podium. You can do 1, 2, and 3 languages. So the principals often didn't see the need for a foreign language. I mean, after all, they were unilingual English speakers. They didn't learn to speak French. And look how perfect they were. Their lives are fabulous. They don't need that, you know, so why would children? So there could be other negative forces against immersion too. Not the least is the parents of goodwill who don't want to place their child in a program because they feel there will be language confusion. As that mother did, the kindergarten mother said, well, what happens to your teacher when she speaks? You know? So they feel there will be language confusion. But kids aren't like that. If you live in a society where there are more than 1 language, the child, and let's say mommy speaks Kazakh and daddy speaks Russian. The child learns very quickly to speak Kazakh to mommy and Russian to daddy. I mean, there's no confusion to him or her. That happens automatically, you know? So it's in our own head. The child got confused. And maybe beyond the language confusion, some of these parents fear, oh, this is horror. Their child could become a little Frenchman. You know? Their little English child, I sent him to this school to learn French. He's taking French. He comes home and he says, bonjour, mama. Oh, no, my God, he's French. You know, that doesn't happen here. The child is surrounded by the power language at all times, the prestige language. That's always there. You know, popular songs in Toronto are not sung in French. They're sung in English by American artists, you know. So, there you go. So, parents on the yes side of the equation, those who wanted immersion, they had to plan very, very carefully. They had to be like a little group of spies, you know, plotting this immersion. They call it immersion. And they realized that careful, long-term planning was important. And Peter Mislo said yesterday here the same thing. I know the NIS realizes this. The worst thing to do is embark on any program with enthusiasm. And we're all going to do it. It's going to be wonderful. We love each other. That's not the way to do it. Careful, long-term planning. You need that for your life, and you need it for education as well. So, we can move the slides here. Go to the next one. So, now, and we can go to the next one. These are beautiful slides. I did these myself, actually. No, go back. Beautiful. It's gorgeous, isn't it? I could have maybe used a color. Okay. So, you must have careful planning. In the broadest sense, you must be clear and specific regarding the outcomes. What do you want to achieve? I mean, before I buy my train ticket, I should know my destination. That's logical. What are the factors that will hinder the realization of these outcomes? What are my problems going to be? Peter talked yesterday about the pros and the cons. What methods will we use to evaluate the outcomes? Because you have to evaluate the outcomes. Maybe you, because you started the program, you said, I think it's a fabulous program. I started it myself, it's beautiful. It's like you saying to somebody, look at my child, my little baby, isn't she gorgeous? Well, people don't want your opinion about your baby, they want somebody else's opinion. So you need a third party to come in and evaluate this. And you have to make sure you have commitment on the part of parents and educational officials. Unless you get the backing of the top people in your organization, they can undermine you. They can cause you many, many problems, even while they're smiling at you. Okay? They'll cause you many, many problems. In fact, the ones that smile the most are the biggest problem. So slide 4. God, that's beautiful. Okay. So specifically, what are the specific things we should pay attention to? Well, ahead of time, a priori, I took Latin. It was one of the best things I ever did, taking Latin. People say, oh, Latin is a dead language. It's a great language to take. I think it trains the mind well. With me, it was an exception, but there you go. So you must have a clarification of what the Ministry of Education, you must bring them on board. You must sort of convince them, Ministry of Education people, it's important, Board of Education superintendents, the bosses, have to be convinced. And this takes a lot of hard work on your part because you believe in language, you think it's important. Why don't they see it? It's so obvious, but they don't see it. So it takes time on your part to bring them on board, to get them on your ship with you. They're going to sail with you together into the sunset. So you have to convince school principals. School principals are very, very important. He or she really controls the school, especially in smaller schools, elementary schools. Our elementary schools in Canada may have maybe 15 teachers on staff, 20 teachers. The principal is very, very important in that small society. He can make or break your life, or she can break or make your life. The principal decides who goes outside to supervise the children during the recess time. 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the afternoon. If the principal doesn't like you, you could be out in the cold, that's in the snow every day, supervising the children. You could get the worst classes. Principals have a great deal of power. Or the principal could undermine you so much you want to leave the school. In secondary schools, our secondary schools are big. 1,500, sometimes 2,000 pupils. So the principal's power is diminished greatly because he or she comes into a staff meeting of 100 teachers. And the principal says, I want you to do this. The teachers, some say, smile. They smile, say, yeah, okay, fine. Go in the classroom, shut the door. They do what they always did, So the principal is very, very important, especially in the elementary family. So you must pay attention to the development of Ministry of Education documents. There should be documents for your new program. You can't just say to the teacher, go in and just teach. Just go in and do your thing. You must have a curriculum, and that must be developed carefully. This is very important. Set some reasonable goals. Understand what immersion programs can and cannot do. In an immersion program, a child is not going to come in kindergarten and let's say leave by the end of even grade 8 speaking French or Kazakh or Russian or whatever like a native. Some do, but very rarely. This is a tough skill. Of all the skills you have, language is likely the one that is one of the toughest, and tell them if you agree with that, one of the toughest, but also it's not just that, it's the one that you pay least attention to, You pay least attention to. You think, well, it's just natural. I learned my language like that, but it's a tough skill. It's a very, very tough skill. So, you must set reasonable outcomes. You must tell parents, this is what your child will be able to do or not be able to do. That also is very true in what we call sort of the core program of 40 minutes a day. People think that they say, well, I took French in school, right from could be grade 4 to grade 12, 40 minutes a day. And it was the program was useless. I can't speak French. Well, think about the amount of time you actually spent time on task. 40 minutes a day. Likely, of the 40 minutes, the teacher spoke for 25 to 30. Likely, a few questions were asked. The same 2 or 3 pupils answered them. So if you add up the amount of time, after 9 years of school, maybe the student has actually spoken the new language, French, for maybe 20 minutes. Well, you can't expect to have that skill. Languages, to speak really well, is like a concerto level pianist. It takes time on task, and those automatic things that were mentioned here. So, you must be careful in selecting teachers and principals. It was mentioned here yesterday about Malaysia, why immersion failed, or this bilingual policy failed in Malaysia, failed in South Korea. And the one thing, and Peter Bispo mentioned a few things, but the biggest thing was not enough attention was given to the teacher. The teacher is everything in education. Everything. I can give you the best curriculum documents written by, down from the mountain on tablets of stone. It doesn't make any difference.
Извините, сколько еще вам на этом минут?
How many?
Сколько осталось еще для вас?
How many is that? How many minutes do I have?
25 минут уже.
What?
25 minutes.
5 minutes?
25 minutes.
Oh, that's 25 already? I'm going to conclude. So it's very, very important that you select the teachers exceedingly carefully. And that is the key. Okay, so no matter what curriculum document you must, without the good teacher, you are really dead. So, coming to a conclusion, show me another slide. Oh, keep going. I love this. I'm not going to do it because there's no time, but I was going to talk about staffing, funding, materials. These are all important. Okay, move on. Next slide. Conclusion. So, initiating, 25 minutes I've done. Implementing and maintaining an effective program requires commitment and an intimate knowledge of the factors that are going to work for you and work against you. Now, we who love language, we think, well, why doesn't everybody love this? But we must look at things with the cold eye of practicality in order to achieve success, so that our students can experience the joy and the thrill of being able to communicate and live comfortably in another language. So, Spasiba, thank you very much. I'm done.